kind of speaking of reality or new realities, things
Yeah.
may change, but, based on your current experience, having worked in different administrations, what usually happens? What are typical expectations that people can, be ready for?
Yeah, honestly, absent the big high-profile ones like a potential Muslim ban or an announced prominent change to H-1Bs, right? Like in a basic sense, it is
Hmm.
slow, and it's directions that come out of Washington D.C. It's always like a process between the embassy in your country and Washington D.C., right? So like for example, like the issuance rates, generally speaking, for like student and tourist visas kind of track with like how well the economy of a given country is doing and what the periodic studies show about how well that nationality uses that visa. I would say don't over assign things to a presidential administration when there's other factors going on. For example, Trump comes into office, then say your country undergoes an economic crisis and suddenly a lot of people are trying to immigrate, maybe some not legally, then you get your visa refused. Well, that's not the American president that changed the situation, right? It's the domestic situation in your own country, which has changed how visa officers look at, generally how people qualify for visas, right? So
Hmm.
other factors, like I see a question in the chat. Oh, did things get tighter? For some things they did between different administrations, right? But I also saw very big changes between like the beginning and middle of the Obama administration about certain types of visas, right?
Hmm.
When I first arrived in India in 2014, there was quite a lot of scrutiny of student visas, right? But over time, as the numbers went up, as we saw that most Indian students, we got the statistical confirmation that they weren't like working illegally, that they were coming back when they said they were going to come back, things got a lot more relaxed. And by the time I left in 2017, it was, I think, a lot easier to get a student visa than it was in 2014.
So they were saying, is it going to get tighter? Maybe they were saying, between these different administrations, was there a major difference of trends, or was it you're basically doing the same job?
At the window, it's going to be the same job. At the window, bluntly, things don't move that fast, right? It's not like one day, last day of Obama, I'm coming into work and we're issuing 80% of students, and then first day of Trump, we're rejecting 70% of students. It doesn't work like that. There's bigger trends that I think kind of forecast the daily behaviors. Despite all of the drama, despite some of the very politicized policies, despite a lot of the heated rhetoric, at the end, remember that like the Immigration and Nationality Act, like the actual law didn't change. Like at the end of the day, you still have to qualify, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that frustrated me about the Muslim ban, then there were many, I'm going to be open about that, was the fact that it would only apply to someone who otherwise qualified for the visa, right? You had to prove that you did qualify for the visa anyways. That also means a lot of people walked away being like, they didn't give me a visa because I was Iranian. I was like, well, I think you didn't get the visa because you didn't qualify, right? So, the basics of overcoming, if it's like a student visa or a tourist visa, overcoming 214B, right? The basics of being able to talk about like what you're doing and why you are doing it and how you're going to support it and what your plan is afterwards, that all stands, right? That all remains. There are going to be certain structural changes with more complicated visas, right? I do expect differences in what I'd call under the hood or in the back office process for like how H-1Bs are approved, that the petitions are approved. I would expect a change in terms of the types of questions and how many questions like H-1Bs get, right? If that becomes a big issue where the White House is saying like, well, I don't know about H-1B fraud, or I'm very worried about H-1B misuse, then that is something that would trickle down to the embassies and consulates and be like, okay, let's start taking a closer look. I remember, and I'm using a lot of Obama examples just because that was a time where I saw a very not dramatic change in policy, right? Obama came to India in 2014 and he said, I love Indian students. We want there to be more Indian students. Right. And then the word from on top at the embassy in New Delhi to all the consulates was like, hey, you heard the president, right? Like, let's stop. Well, not bring him in, because there was some tension, because I remember raising my hand in a meeting with the ambassador and, from the back, a not important guy being like, does this mean we just issue everybody a visa? And he said, well, no. But what it does mean is that remember that part of your mission and part of what America wants out of this relationship with India is more Indians studying in America. And that happened. right? When they basically said these are the changes of categories of what means that an Iranian would be considered a security threat, that's not a situation where I started looking at everyone and being like, I think you're a terrorist. I think you're a terrorist. It means I'm checking the list and I'm implementing the policy, right? And that's how it'll work. Yeah.
Sounds good. Did you know the approval rates for US visas has gotten worse the past few years, and a previous rejection is really hard to overcome? Don't worry, because our friends at Argo Visa can help you ace your upcoming visa interview. Argo Visa Coaching pairs you with visa consular officers who have conducted tens of thousands of visa interviews abroad all over the world. They can guide you on how to overcome your obstacles and craft your story exactly how the visa officer needs to hear it so you can get granted approval in your visa interview. And if you've been rejected before, they can help you understand why and then help you craft a new and better strategy to be better prepared for your next attempt. Their Visa Checkup tool is an amazing free resource that you can use that helps you gauge how a visa officer is likely to respond to your current situation. Quickly answer a dozen questions and see what your score will be. If you want visa interview success, Argo Visa is the team that can help you find it. Check them out with the links above and below. Good luck, my friends.